friends, and welcome to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Television. I'm your host, Carter Seaton, and I'm delighted to have you with us in person, finally, after all these long months. This is a show that profiles authors, editors, publishers, and because of the pandemic, we've been able to do it all across the country. Today we are live with Robin Yocum, who is here in Huntington with us. His latest novel is The Sacrifice of Lester Yates. He is a native of Brilliant, Ohio. Love that name.
Brilliant, Ohio, right on the river.
A small town near Steubenville. His other novels include A Perfect Shot, Insured for Murder, Dead Before Deadline, The Essay, Favorite Sons, A Brilliant Death, and A Welcome Murder. If these all sound like murder mysteries.
A lot of murder and death in there, aren't there? Yeah.
You pretty much get the picture. He was nominated for the Mystery Writers of America's Edgar Award in 2017 for A Brilliant Death. He also owns Yocum Communications, a public relations and marketing firm in Westerville, Ohio. He was a crime and investigative reporter in Columbus for the Columbus Dispatch from 80 to 91 and won more than 30 local, state, and national journalism awards. So you can see why this has become kind of his passion for what he writes. This is, I think, your second visit to Chapters,
I think it's my third. It's my third,
yes.
yes.
Well, I got you for 2 times then.
Exactly.
So you've got a new novel that's coming out, or has come out.
Yeah, it was out in April.
Let me just ask you what else you've done since you were here last, other than stay home because of the pandemic. Yeah.
So I've been busy, and I work, my public relations firm, I run it out of the house. So my life didn't change all that much.
Yeah.
I was already working out of the house, and but business has been good, and everyone's healthy. So
That's good.
Kids are healthy, grandchildren are all good. So, but I've been still writing.
That's good.
Still writing, and I'm putting together. Before this came out, before Lester came out, I had 3 books come out: A Brilliant Death, A Welcome Murder, A Perfect Shot. And those had actually been sitting in my closet for several years when my agent said, "Where are your practice books? Because all you guys got practice books. I want to read them." Well, so when we signed the contract to publish those, that gave me 3 years to. I've been working on other projects. So I've been doing some books that are coming of age. I tried to do. I think I did a pretty good job with it. We'll see. A humor book, and I did one that is more literary fiction, and then I've got another crime mystery book that we're trying to sell right now.
And a short story.
And a short story, yes. I've been doing some short stories and had one printed in when was it? I think it was 19 now. In Strand magazine, which is a wonderful magazine, and it was called The Last Hit, and it was about a mobster who's outlived his usefulness to the family, and what happens. And it was selected for Best American Mystery Story, which was quite an honor. I was very tickled to. There were some very James Lee Burke is in there, and some pretty heavy hitters. It was flattering to see my book story in there with.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about Lester.
Let's do that.
Tell us the premise for this story.
Well, the premise of this actually began probably over 10 years ago, and when I did Favorite Sons, because Favorite Sons was supposed to focus on a wrongful conviction. And when I write a book, I don't put words on page 1 until I know what's on the last page. So I started writing, and I was creating the crime for which this other guy would be wrongfully convicted. Well, after I got done creating the crime, these 4 boys somewhat accidentally kill another kid. I was more interested in what happened to those 4 boys than I was my original premise. So I quit writing because now I don't know how the book ends. I want to see what happens to these 4 boys. So I quit writing, and I created the ending for Favorite Sons. And I wrote the book, and it was published and everything. Well, if you remember, the narrator was Hutch Van Buren, and he, at the time, was running for Ohio Attorney General.
Right.
But the book ends before the election, so you don't know if... Okay. So this book actually picks up Hutch wins the election, and this book picks up a couple years later. He's in the job, and he's miserable.
Right.
He just doesn't like. He feels like he's a paper pusher. He's not getting anything done. And the premise is Lester is in prison, ready to go to. He's going to be executed. When Hutch is presented with evidence that says, maybe Lester isn't the Egypt Valley Strangler, and he starts working toward trying to find out. He's not convinced that, it could still be him, but he starts working to find out are we going to execute an innocent man? Mm-hmm. And that's the premise of the book.
But there's also political intrigue in there too.
Absolutely, yes.
Because there's a man that he sort of answers to, in a sense, that thinks he's going to become president, and he's going to take Hutch along with him. So there's do I do what I think is right, or do I follow along on his coattails?
What is politically savvy? Exactly. Right. Yeah. Big Jim Walensky.
I love the name.
Who is? I have him coming from down around Marietta, and he is the governor, and he's a former All-American football player at Ohio State, a former Chicago Bear. He's married to a former Miss Illinois. He's got big, handsome guy, perfect, in every way. And he's the darling expected to be the Republican nominee for president. Hutch is the attorney general, and Big Jim tells him, if I get the job, if I get elected president, you're coming with me. You're going to be my attorney general. Right. So Hutch, even though he doesn't like being state attorney general, he's not without ambition. He's thinking, this would be a pretty good gig. So while he is working and what the governor tells him is, don't come to me, because he's the law and order governor. That's one of his platforms is law and order. And he tells him, he says, don't come to me and say, I don't think he did it. If you want me to pardon him, you've got to tell me who did it and prove he did it. Okay? So that's a big step right there. But he said, I'm not, I can't, in the middle of a presidential campaign, I can't be pardoned a notorious serial killer. Mm-hmm. So that is Hutch's challenge as he starts moving forward. And, there are, the governor has people working for him who are trying to protect the governor, protect his reputation, and they don't want to see Lester get off of death row. Mm-hmm. So there's forces working against him while he's trying to take a look. Right.
Is any of this based on anything real? Was there any, some unsolved murder that has haunted you?
Well, not an unsolved murder, but...
excuse me, a wrongful
yes.
Conviction.
Well, that's how it started. So when I start to write a book, I just call it a launch point. And it's that one little germ of an idea that makes me think, I bet I could wrap a book around this. And when I was with the Columbus Dispatch, I was doing a series of stories on wrongful convictions. And I went to the Ohio Public Defender, and I said, realizing that every guy in prison is not guilty. Do you have anyone who's more not guilty than anyone else? And they said, there's this guy, and his name's Johnny Spurko. And I went down, and Johnny was on death row for the murder of a female postmaster in Elgin, Ohio, which is like a village of 100 people in northwest Ohio. Well, I can tell you, Johnny Spurko is not a nice man, but he did not do that murder. Okay, he murdered another woman once in Kentucky. John's like 68 now, probably pushing 70. He spent most of his life in one institution or another, but he didn't do that one. There's no doubt, absolutely, positively, no doubt in my mind. So before I left that day, they gave me a tour of the death house, and Ohio still used the electric chair, and off to the side there was a room, and inside there was a panel with a red, a green, a white button. And on execution days, 3 prison guards, volunteer duty but extra pay, would go in, and when the warden gave the signal, all 3 pushed their button, but only one button's hooked up to the juice. Well, that was my impetus for wanting to write the wrongful conviction. That was sort of where I thought, and because I wanted to focus on that prison guard, because what's his life look like? Not in a demeaning way, but who volunteers for that duty?
Yeah.
What's his life
Yeah.
look like? And that's what spurred me. That was kind of my inspiration to do Favorite Sons, which ultimately became this one.
Yeah, right.
10 years later.
Right.
So.
Yeah,
And Johnny's still in prison. They commuted his sentence to life without chance of parole. So he's still in prison.
Well, that's probably
for a crime he didn't.
Probably a good thing, though.
Yeah, John's, yeah.
If he's not a good guy.
Yeah.
So I know there really is an Egypt Valley.
Yes.
Were any bodies ever found there? Is that someplace that's kind of typical as a place that you might dump a body?
No, it's just, when I was a kid and we would go to Columbus, I would always see that Egypt Valley. And there used to be a huge, one of those giant earth movers, power shovels, called the Gem of Egypt.
I know that one.
Okay. And
It did strip mining.
Yeah, it would strip the top.
Yeah.
The top layer off. And I just always thought it was odd when I was a kid. I said, why is it Egypt? And so when I was writing the book, the one young lady, the first victim, is at a bar on Wheeling Island. And then she's found in Piedmont Lake, which is a man-made lake toward Cambridge, west of Wheeling. It would just happen to be the first area. And I thought, well, that's perfect because it's the Egypt Valley. It's a great name. And if you're going to dump bodies, it's probably a good place for it because it's pretty remote. And but no, that was just something that I came up with. And
Yeah, I love it when there's places like that you can use that just seem to grab you for a place to something to put in the book. It's fascinating.
It worked out because it's a big wooded area with a lake and lots of little alcoves and
Yeah. You talked a little bit about Hutch's kind of inner battle about, do I do what's right or, do you usually try to figure out what kind of the inner demon is in your character rather than just the outside?
Oh, very much so. Because I think you have to be honest with your readers. They're not superheroes. They're not, and the older you get, you realize, how we all have our frailties and vulnerabilities, and so I try to show that because I think that we as humans we say we live in the black or white. We live in the white, because we're good, But the fact is, we spend most of our life in that gray area in the middle, where we have morals and values, but sometimes we dip over here if no one's looking, we. And I just think that people are complicated, and they do they're not perfect, and I try to create my characters. I try to be honest with my readers, and I do get some criticism. One of the reviews, I kind of got beat up. They said, Hutch was so violent and brutal, which I don't think so. He's got,
either.
But he had a temper, and it got the best of him a couple times. But we all that's the way we live, and so I very much try to show the good and the bad. And like I say, we're not superheroes. We're not Superman.
Right. Well, speaking of the good, talk a little bit about the love interest in the story. That's a cool subplot that he's got. First of all, the girl named Shelley that used to be his squeeze, so to speak. Yeah.
Well, so Hutch is some of his kryptonite is his inability to pick good women.
Yeah.
And the way he describes it, he's talking to one of his underlings who's who's poking at him a little bit. Libitor wants to know why he doesn't have a girlfriend. He says, did you ever go to a party? He says, do you have any friends who are crazy? She said, of course. She goes, well, did you ever go to a party and this crazy friend of yours is with this guy and he seems normal and he's good looking, he's got a good job, and you're wondering what the heck? And she said, of course. He said, well, I'm that guy. I continually pick women who are not good for me. So in the previous book, he was having, his love interest was his campaign manager, Shelley. Mm-hmm. So they had ended it, or she had ended it with him before the end of the book. So, she's back in this book.
Right.
And even though it's been years, there's a scene there where he's sort of describing his lust for her.
There's still a little spark.
Yeah, there's a spark there. He is very infatuated with
his investigator.
his investigator, his lab technician. And then there's, toward the end of the book, there's another woman that kind of comes into the scene that I don't want to, give anything away. But he hasn't made any moves on anyone or to meet that end. And I don't know if I'm going to do another book with him. I might. But it's, we've all, like I said, we got kryptonite, and that's his. He just doesn't do well with his relation, and he's divorced. He's been divorced, but pretty good guy all in all. Just doesn't do well picking women.
Doesn't make good choices.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, one of the people who makes it really clear she understands this is his secretary, Margaret.
Yes.
I just absolutely love Margaret.
Isn't she a great character?
Oh, she's wonderful. Did you model her on somebody that you knew? Because she's just terrific.
Well, I actually no. And most of my characters, now I visualized someone I knew for that, and I don't want to say who it was, but I did visualize someone. But she just, when I was on the crime beat, because we would go out to the east side, Margaret's black, and it would just seem that invariably there would be an older black woman at the crime scene, and they would say, and for years it was kind of a joke in the newsroom, and so Margaret, that's one of her sayings, is that whether she's happy or angry or frustrated, whatever, it's that So she came to work for Hutch in Akron when he was the prosecutor, and then she followed him to Columbus. When he won Attorney General, she came over to be his secretary, and she is somewhat Hutch's moral compass and his conscience. If she thinks he's heading down the wrong path, I mean, she jumps on him, and they have a great relationship. I think and the back and forth with them is pretty good. She was a character, and that in the last book, I hadn't anticipated her being a strong character, but then I was very pleased with how, and I say that like I had no control over it, but it's just funny how she worked her way into the book and my heart, because I wanted to see her come back. It happened again in this book with Denise Libator, the intern. I didn't see.
Oh yeah, she's the one that got the dog together.
Right.
And then she won't give the dog up.
Right. I mean, I love her character. I just love that character, and I hadn't anticipated that early on, that she would become this strong character, and she really, I think, steals some of the scenes from Hutch. I really like both of them. So if I do another one, Hutch will be there. Jerry, his chief detective, Libator, and Margaret. I mean, they'll all come back. I might even have Lester in there. You never know.
Well, I think you're right about, you say, well, it makes it sound like we don't have any control. But in a sense, sometimes as writers, we don't. We start writing, and all of a sudden, it sounds so right to have these people say what they do, and that somehow it forces you as the writer to continue down that path. I mean, you could stop, but it feels so natural.
It does.
I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, because now they've got a relationship. He barks at her, and then he's kind of making it up to her, and then she tells him, well, everyone knows you've got a bad temper, and he doesn't think he does. And it opened the door for a lot of back and forth.
Right.
And I did so a little background on this. So I started writing this book about 10 years ago, and I knew how it ended. I liked the premise, but I couldn't get any traction. And I'm working on it. I'm thinking, this is. I don't know what the problem is, but I can't go anywhere. So I put it away. I just said, so I got it back out about 3 years ago and started reading it. And I finally figured out the problem was most of the action was set in Columbus. and that Columbus, which I like, I've lived there 40 years now, is a very sterile city compared to, Pittsburgh or Wheeling, Steubenville, where when I was young, it was the grit and the grind. I mean, we had the steel mills and the coal mines and the railroads. So once I moved the action back toward the Ohio Valley, it was amazing how it picked up.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Setting makes such a difference.
It did. It did. I was very comfortable in that setting. I thought, I can.
Well, you've written about it before too,
Right.
so that makes it more comfortable for you.
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was just, I moved the setting and I rolled right through it. And another little interesting fact is that I did virtually the entire first draft of that on my phone.
Wow.
Using my voice to text app. Because with my business, my public relations, I'm on the road quite a bit. My kids, one's in Michigan, one's in South Carolina, one's in Tennessee. So when I go, I'm on the road. I'm a road warrior. I would use my voice to text app and have those talk to the voices in my head or record the voices in my head and then email it back to myself, and then I would edit it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Do you do a lot of research with your novels?
Virtually none. And it's just because I know if they're set in the valley, so I know my setting. I was a crime reporter for years,
the crime beat.
so I know the judicial process and the investigative process. And I was a reporter. I covered a little bit of politics, but I was around it a lot. So I kind of knew how all that ran. But I'll look up something every once in a while, a date, okay, when did this happen, if I want to make reference to it. But I don't do much research. It's mostly my imagination. And I remember years ago, I was doing a story. It was some concept of a parallel in time where you could walk through this window in time and come out somewhere else. And I'm looking for something on the internet. And I probably spent 40 minutes messing around. And I said, it's the Von Cleaver theory of what. And I know when I do stuff like that, I know it sends people to the internet to start Googling to find out if it's true.
Yeah.
And one of the things I did in this, if you saw in the very beginning.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say. I looked it up.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah.
The Egypt Valley, in memory of the Egypt Valley 18 or whatever. And
that's the first thing I did was Google that.
In memory of the Egypt Valley 18 and all those names. And I know it sent people to do it. And I kind of enjoy doing little tricks like that once in a while.
It's not a very pleasant subject, but talk to me a little bit about serial killers. Do you think that they have something in common? I mean,
beyond derangement, or
that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you've read about Henry Lee Lucas and Ted Bundy and all of those different things, and they seem to prey on women.
Right. Or children.
Yeah.
John Wayne Gacy.
Yes, right. Do you think it's a control thing? Or do you think it's I don't know. I've always been, particularly thinking about Henry Lee Lucas, because there's apparently a crime here in Huntington that he confessed to. Now, that's among the hundreds that he confessed to, so you don't know whether he did or not. But I always wonder what in the world is it?
What flips that switch, or what makes
what is it? What switch isn't flipped in that
person? Or whatever,
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't understand, and I don't know that you or I
could ever figure
it out or understand what would possess somebody to take another life. But I'll tell you this. I covered a serial rapist in Columbus. And he would choke his victims unconscious. He was a doctor, and then bring them back, revive them. And every time he raped a woman, he took her deeper and deeper into unconsciousness or death before he brought her back. And eventually he wasn't going to be able to bring her back. So when he did that, would he then have, once the wolf has tasted blood, or would he have continued to just murder them? I don't know, because it's beyond my ability to comprehend. You could be that evil,
Right.
but they are among us.
Yeah, right. So what are you working on now?
Right now, I actually wrote a short story that I submitted to the Strand, that even when I submitted, I thought, I think this could be a book. And I haven't actually started on it.
Because you don't know where it ends.
I actually kind of have a pretty good idea where this ends, but it needed more. It needed to be filled out more. It has to kind of do with an abduction, and I want to run parallel stories with it. So I need to get the woman who's abducted. I need to know more about her. So I'm just thinking about it, and I brought the manuscript is out in my truck, tonight or something. I'll kind of tinker with it a little bit, but once I start writing on it, once I start seriously writing, I'll try to do 500 words a day, every day until I get it done.
So you fit that in with your work schedule?
I do, and I don't have a routine. I just do it whenever, whenever I've got a couple minutes here and there, or I'm driving, or whenever. I try to take advantage of it.
What do you read for pleasure? Do you read crime novels or something else?
No, I don't read a lot of crime novels. I like history. I just finished The Splendid Navile, which is about Churchill's first year in office during the bombing of London, which was really interesting. I am reading News of the World, which is fiction. And I've got
Is that the one that they made the movie with Tom Hanks?
Yes.
Yes.
And I've got another couple of books on my shelf there, and one of them is about a quarterback for West Point and a linebacker from Navy who played in the Army-Navy game together one year, and then were both deployed to Iraq. And that was actually just given to me as a gift last week, so I haven't. And I will readily admit, I don't read as much as I would like to, because I think if I have time to read, I should be putting words on paper. So, yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's.
No matter what
not
Stephen
a
King
surprise.
says, you should be reading all the time. I would like to read more, but I don't read as much as I would like.
Yes, right. I think we're about to run out of time, but tell us where people can buy The Sacrifice of Lester Yates.
I think just about anywhere. Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. I urge you to support your local independent bookstore. I buy all my books. There's a great little bookstore in Mount Vernon, Ohio called Paragraphs, and they support me unbelievably. So I try to buy my books there. And there's a couple independent stores in Columbus.
And if you're an online shopper, there's bookshop.org, which supports
the
independent
bookstores.
books. Right, exactly.
We need independent bookstores. It used to be every little town
I know.
had their own little,
Yes,
and I hope we see that come back. I know that Westerville, Ohio, which I live near Westerville, there's a new one opening up this fall. So
Good. That's good.
Try to support that.
We need more and more of those. Well, thanks so much for coming back to talk
it's
to
always
us.
a
It's always a
pleasure,
pleasure to hear from you and find out what lurks
What I'm up to?
what lurks in your crazy little mind.
yeah, I know. And my wife says the same thing. She says, you scare me sometimes. I get up in the morning and say, oh, you know what I thought of last night?
Right. Say, gee, I dreamed about a murder. Yeah, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
being here. Folks, come back again another time and we'll interview somebody else probably just as interesting as Robin Yocum.
Well, don't
and
get
his
carried
book,
away.
The Sacrifice of Lester Yates. Thank you. This is Carter Seaton, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Connect with Chapters through email. Write to lp4@zoominternet.net. Chapters has a Facebook page at Armstrong Chapters. Like, subscribe, share, and comment. All Chapters episodes are available on YouTube. Visit the Armstrong Neighborhood channel on YouTube and look for a playlist of all the Chapters programs.